Darius Vale stood in the hospital corridor and tore the badge from his wife's chest, while doctors and nurses watched in silence. He believed Elena Mercer was only a nurse who had become an embarrassment to his growing reputation. He told her she no longer belonged in his hospital. Elena picked up her coat and walked away calmly, carrying a secret that could change the future of the entire institution. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. But the day Darius destroyed his marriage began long before that hallway confrontation. For 10 years, Elena Mercer had believed her marriage was built on something stronger than money, titles, or appearances. She and Darius had started with very little. They lived in a modest apartment, shared simple dinners after long shifts, and dreamed about a future they would build together. Back then, Darius was not the powerful hospital executive everyone respected today. He was ambitious, talented, and constantly searching for his next opportunity. Elena saw the good in him before the world did. She supported him through difficult years, listened to his frustrations, and helped him understand the medical system from the perspective of the people who worked closest with patients. Elena was a nurse, and she was proud of it. She never wanted a title that impressed strangers. She cared about the patients who arrived frightened and confused. She remembered names, comforted families, and stayed late when others wanted to leave. To many people inside the hospital, Elena was the kind of person who made the place feel human. But Darius had started seeing the world differently. As he moved higher into hospital administration, he became more focused on reputation, connections, and appearances. He attended expensive business events, spent time with executives, and surrounded himself with people who measured success by influence. Slowly, Elena noticed the changes. The man who once admired her kindness began calling it a lack of ambition. The husband who once said she was the strongest person he knew started suggesting that she was holding him back. Darius never said it directly at first. It came through small comments. He mentioned how other executive spouses attended charity events and business dinners. He talked about families with larger homes and stronger social connections. He started acting as if Elena's simple lifestyle was something he needed to overcome. Their marriage had become a quiet battle between two different beliefs. Elena believed a person's value came from character. Darius had started believing value came from status. The difference became even clearer when Darius's mother, Vivian Vale, began visiting more often. Vivian came from a wealthy social circle and had always believed Darius deserved someone who could help elevate his image. She respected success, but only when it looked impressive from the outside. To Vivian, Elena was kind, but kindness was not enough. A nurse was useful, she believed. A powerful partner was valuable. Elena never argued with her. She simply listened, smiled politely, and continued living the life she had chosen. There was one thing Darius and Vivian never understood. Elena's quiet life was not proof that she lacked power. It was a choice. Years earlier, before her marriage, Elena's father had created a medical investment trust connected to several healthcare properties. He had been a careful businessman who believed wealth could reveal people's true intentions. After his passing, legal arrangements were placed under strict conditions. Elena knew some of the details, but she had never used them to influence anyone. She had wanted something simple. She wanted to know who she was without the weight of her family name. That was why she never mentioned the private emails from legal representatives. That was why she kept old documents locked away instead of displaying them. That was why she allowed people to see only the woman standing in front of them, not the legacy behind her. Even inside the hospital, there were small signs that something about Elena was different. Senior employees who knew her family history treated her with unusual respect. Certain executives paused before speaking around her. Occasionally, someone from the legal department would address her with a level of formality that confused others. Elena always avoided attention. She never wanted admiration based on something she inherited. But Darius did not see any of that. He saw a wife who worked as a nurse while he climbed toward executive leadership. He saw someone who did not fit the image he wanted the world to see, and recently he had started making decisions without considering her feelings at all. The first sign came when he stopped asking for her opinion about hospital matters. Then he stopped talking about his day. Eventually, Elena began feeling less like his partner and more like someone standing quietly outside his new life. She still hoped the man she married was somewhere underneath the ambition, but that hope was becoming harder to protect. One evening, while Darius was preparing for another executive meeting, Elena's phone received a private email from a legal office she had not heard from in months. The subject line was short. Regarding the Mercer Medical Trust. She looked at the message for a long moment. Then she closed the screen. She was not ready to open it. Not yet. Because whatever was inside that email could change everything between her and Darius. And before Elena could decide what to do next, Darius was about to make a choice that would permanently change their marriage. After Elena closed the email from the legal office, she sat quietly at the kitchen table for several minutes. The apartment was silent except for the sound of the refrigerator and the distant traffic outside their window. For most people, that message would have represented an opportunity. For Elena, it felt like a responsibility she had been carrying for years. She knew the Mercer Medical Trust existed. She knew her father had built something significant before he passed away. But she had never wanted to use that name as a shield or a weapon. She wanted to be valued as Elena, not as the daughter of a powerful man. That choice had once made sense. Now she was beginning to wonder if protecting that secret had allowed people to mistake kindness for weakness. Years earlier, Darius had been different. He was ambitious, but he was also humble. He listened when Elena talked about hospital operations. He respected the nurses who worked behind the scenes. He often told her that she understood people better than anyone he had ever met. Those were the moments Elena remembered when she looked at him now, because the man standing beside her today was harder to recognize. Darius had spent years climbing through hospital administration. Every promotion brought him more confidence, but it also brought more distance between them. He started attending private dinners with executives, networking events with investors, and meetings where conversations were less about helping and patience and more about influence. Elena noticed that his priorities had changed. She noticed when he stopped asking about her day. She noticed when he started correcting the way she dressed before social events. She noticed when he introduced her simply as my wife instead of talking about the person she was. The most painful part was that Darius did not think he was hurting her. He believed he was improving his life. Vivian Vale had only encouraged that belief. Darius's mother had always cared deeply about appearances. She's admired powerful families, expensive neighborhoods, and people who could open important doors. Whenever she visited, she found small ways to remind Elena where she thought Elena belonged. "You are a good person," Vivian once said during dinner, carefully choosing her words. "But goodness alone does not create a future." Elena understood what she meant. Vivian believed Darius needed someone who could stand beside him in boardrooms and charity events, someone who could strengthen his image. Not someone who spent nights walking hospital floors and wearing the same simple clothes year after year. Elena never argued. She knew defending herself would only create another fight where she had to prove her value to people who had already decided not to see it. But she did begin setting small boundaries. When Darius dismissed her opinion about hospital operations, she stopped explaining herself. When Vivian criticized her career, Elena stopped trying to earn her approval. And when Darius began making decisions without including her, Elena started keeping records of conversations, emails, and changes that felt unusual. Not because she wanted revenge. Because she had learned that love without respect could become a place where a person slowly disappeared. Meanwhile, Darius continued believing Elena had nothing beyond her nursing career. That belief made him careless. He spoke openly about his future at the hospital. He talked about becoming the public face of the next expansion project. He talked about the executives he wanted to impress and the reputation he wanted to build. Elena listened quietly. She knew more about the hospital than he realized. She knew which departments were struggling. She knew which leaders had earned respect. She knew which decisions were made for patients and which were made for appearances. But she never used that knowledge to embarrass him. She still hoped the man she married would remember the person who stood beside him before anyone knew his name. Then one evening, Darius came home later than usual. He placed a folder on the table and barely looked at her. "I have a major opportunity coming," he said. Elena looked up from her book. "That's good. It could change everything." His voice carried excitement, but not the kind he used to share with her. This was the voice of someone speaking to a future where she was no longer part of the picture. "I need to be surrounded by people who understand where I'm going," he added. The words were polite. The meaning was not. Elena felt the distance between them grow wider. She did not ask who those people were. She did not ask why he sounded like he was already leaving. Instead, she simply watched him walk away with the confidence of someone who believed the future belonged to him. Later that night, Elena opened the legal email again. This time, she read the message carefully. A representative from her father's trust was requesting a private meeting. The subject was not about money. It was about her rights as the successor of the trust. Elena stared at the screen. For years, she had protected Darius from a truth that could change everything. Now, she had to decide whether protecting that secret was protecting their marriage or only protecting the illusion of it. The next morning, Darius received news that could place him at the center of the hospital's biggest expansion project yet. What he did not know was that the final approval he needed belonged to someone he had already started pushing away. The message about Darius's upcoming expansion project spread quickly through the hospital. Everyone knew it was the opportunity he had been waiting for. If the deal succeeded, he would become one of the most recognizable executives in the medical industry. His name would appear in business articles, at fundraising events, and among the people who made decisions behind closed doors. Darius loved the idea. For the first time in years, he felt like he was becoming the person he always believed he was meant to be. Elena noticed the change immediately. He started spending more time preparing presentations and attending private meetings. He bought new suits for business events and spent evenings reviewing documents instead of talking with her. He was always distracted, always looking toward the next level of success. At first, Elena tried to be supportive. She asked about his plans. She listened when he explained the expansion strategy. She even offered observations based on her years inside the hospital. But Darius no longer wanted her perspective. "You don't see these things the way executives do," he told her one night. The sentence was simple, but it stayed with her. Because for years he had trusted her understanding of the hospital. Now he acted as if her experience no longer mattered. Elena did not argue. She simply realized that Darius had started separating people into two groups. People who could help him rise, and people he believed were beneath him. That was when Simone Reed entered his life more openly. Simone was a hospital consultant who worked closely with the executive team. She was confident, polished, and comfortable around wealthy donors and business leaders. She knew exactly how to speak in meetings, how to impress important people, and how to make Darius feel admired. Around Simone, Darius became a different person. He laughed more. He talked about his achievements more. He seemed younger, more confident, almost like he was returning to the ambitious man Elena first met years ago. But Elena saw something else. She saw a man who was enjoying being admired more than being loved. The signs were small at first. A message that disappeared too quickly. A meeting that lasted longer than expected. A business dinner that suddenly became private. Darius was careful, but not careful enough. Elena was not unaware. She simply refused to create a scene without understanding what was really happening. She had spent years building a life with him. She did not want to destroy it based on suspicion alone. But one evening, she saw Darius and Simone leaving a private restaurant together. They were not discussing work. They were not keeping distance. The way they looked at each other told Elena everything she needed to know. She stood across the street and watched them for a moment. There was pain. There was disappointment. But there was also clarity. For years, Elena had wondered whether Darius had simply become stressed, ambitious, or overwhelmed. That night, she understood something different. He was making choices, and those choices were hurting her. When Darius came home later, Elena did not confront him. She did not accuse him. She did not ask questions he was prepared to deny. Instead, she quietly backed up the evidence she had: messages, dates, photos, records of meetings, not because she wanted to punish him, because she had learned that protecting herself was not the same as seeking revenge. Meanwhile, Darius continued moving forward with Simone at his side. He started bringing her into the same social circles where Elena had once stood beside him. At hospital events, people began noticing how often Simone appeared near him. Some assumed she was simply a professional partner. Others noticed the way Darius looked at her. Vivian Vale noticed too. But unlike Elena, Vivian was not disappointed. She was pleased. To her, Simone represented everything Elena did not: confidence, connections, ambition. A person who could match the image Darius wanted to create. "You need someone who understands your future," Vivian told him during a private conversation. Darius did not respond immediately, but he did not defend Elena either. That silence hurt more than any insult. Because Elena had spent years standing beside him when nobody else saw his potential. Now, when he finally reached a position where people noticed him, he was looking for someone else to stand there. While Darius became more distant, Elena quietly continued reviewing information connected to the hospital. One evening, she received another message from the legal office handling her father's trust. This time, the message contained a warning. There had been unusual activity involving hospital expansion discussions. Certain people were asking questions about ownership structures. Elena read the message twice. Someone was trying to understand who had control behind the hospital. She did not know whether it was connected to Darius or someone else. But she knew one thing: the secret she had protected was becoming harder to keep. The next day, Elena noticed Simone leaving a meeting with members of the finance department. Simone looked confident. Too confident. Later, Elena quietly checked the public records connected to the expansion project and found something strange. Simone had not only been helping Darius prepare the deal, she had been studying the hospital's ownership history. Elena closed the file and leaned back in her chair. For the first time, she wondered if Simone was interested in Darius himself, or if Darius was simply the easiest way for her to get closer to something much bigger. That night, Elena received another email. This one was shorter. The legal representative requested an urgent private meeting, and the subject line contained only 4 words: "Your trust is moving." The next morning, Elena arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. She walked through the same entrance she had used for years, the same reception desk, the same polished floors, the same employees rushing between departments with coffee in their hands and tired expressions on their faces. To everyone else, it was an ordinary morning. To Elena, it felt different. She knew something had shifted. Darius was no longer just a distant husband chasing success. He was becoming someone willing to remove anyone who stood between him and the image he wanted, even her. She spent the first part of the morning reviewing patient reports and helping the nursing team with their workload. She did what she always did. She focused on the people in front of her. That was one reason so many employees respected her. Elena never acted like she was above anyone. She knew the names of the cleaning staff. She thanked the technicians who repaired equipment late at night. She stayed calm when families were upset and doctors were overwhelmed. But Darius no longer noticed those things. He only noticed what he believed Elena lacked. Later that afternoon, Elena saw him walking through the executive floor with Simone beside him. They were discussing the expansion project. Darius looked confident. Simone looked comfortable. They moved through the hallway like they already belonged at the top. Elena watched from a distance. She felt the familiar pain in her chest, but she did not let it control her. She had spent enough time asking why Darius was changing. Now she was paying attention to what he was doing, and what he was doing was dangerous. That evening, Elena met with the legal representative from her father's trust through a secure video call. The attorney's name was Marcus Holloway. He had worked with her father for years and was one of the few people who knew the full details of the Mercer Medical Trust. Elena, Marcus said carefully. The situation has become more complicated. She stayed quiet. What happened? She asked. Marcus explained that several people connected to the hospital expansion were asking questions about ownership approval. The project was moving quickly, and certain executives appeared to believe they could finalize decisions without involving the trust. Elena understood what that meant. Someone was treating the hospital as if the people behind it were invisible, just like they had treated her. Do you believe Darius knows? She asked. Marcus paused. I believe he knows there is power behind the ownership structure, he said, but I do not believe he understands who holds it. Elena looked down. For years, she had protected Darius from a truth that could have changed the way he treated her. Now she wondered if that protection had only allowed him to become more careless. Still, she did not rush to expose herself. She wanted facts, not anger. Send me everything connected to the expansion proposal, Elena said. I want to understand exactly what is happening before I make any decision. Marcus agreed. It was a small step, but it was the first time Elena had taken control of the situation instead of simply enduring it. The next day, Darius made his own move. He called Elena into his office. She immediately noticed the difference. This was not a husband asking for a conversation. This was an executive preparing a discussion. Darius had remained behind his desk while she sat across from him. I think we both know things have changed, he said. Elena looked at him calmly. What things? Darius sighed as if he was disappointed that she did not understand. My career has reached a point where I need stability. I need people around me who understand the world I'm entering. The words were carefully chosen. But Elena heard the message underneath. He was saying she did not belong in that world. I have supported you for years, Elena said quietly. Darius looked away. I know, and I appreciate that. But support is not the same as partnership. The sentence hurt because it erased everything she had given. The long shifts, the sacrifices, the moments when she believed they were building something together. Darius continued. You are a good person, Elena. But sometimes good people are not the right people for the next chapter. She studied his face. For a moment, she looked for the man she had married. She did not find him. Instead, she saw someone who had convinced himself that success gave him permission to rewrite the past. Elena stood. I hope you find whatever you think you are looking for. That was all she said. She did not beg. She did not argue. She walked out with the same quiet dignity she had carried for years. But outside the office, she noticed something that made her stop. On the executive floor, a printed document had been left near the conference room. She did not touch it. She did not need to. The title was visible from where she stood. Vantage Medical Expansion Agreement. The same company name Marcus had mentioned. The same name connected to her father's trust. Elena walked away without taking the paper, but now she knew something important. Darius was not just pushing her out emotionally. He was moving toward a decision that could affect the very institution he believed belonged to him. That night, Elena received another message from Marcus. This time, there was an attachment, a copy of the expansion approval request, and at the bottom of the document was a signature line. The one person whose approval was required before the deal could move forward. Elena stared at the blank space. Then she saw Darius's name listed as this person was truthful. He had no idea who he was asking for permission from, and he had no idea that the woman he was preparing to remove from his life was the only person who could decide whether his biggest opportunity would ever happen. The meeting with Marcus Holloway changed the way Elena looked at everything around her. For years, she had known her father left behind something important. She knew there were legal structures, investments, and responsibilities connected to the family name, but she had never fully understood the scale of what he had built. Marcus placed several documents on the table in front of her. These are not personal assets, he explained. Your father created a medical holding company that was designed to continue operating long after he was gone. Elena looked down at the papers. The name appeared again. Vantage Medical Holdings, the same name connected to the expansion project Darius was trying to control. My father owned the hospital? Elena asked quietly. Marcus nodded. Not just the building. the network behind it. He believed healthcare should be managed with long-term responsibility, not short-term pressure. Elena sat back slowly. For years, she had walked through those hospital halls, believing she was simply one of the people serving inside them. She had never imagined she was connected to the foundation beneath them. Marcus continued carefully. Your father made specific arrangements because he did not want people treating you differently because of your inheritance. Elena understood immediately. That was exactly why she had never told Darius. Her father had always believed money revealed people. He wanted Elena to experience life without people changing their behavior because of what she could provide. She had wanted the same thing. She wanted a husband who loved Elena Mercer, not the woman behind a powerful family legacy. But now that choice had become painful, because Darius had shown her something she never wanted to believe. When he thought she had no power, he stopped respecting her. Marcus opened another document. When the trust conditions were activated, you became the controlling successor. Elena stared at the page. Controlling? Yes, Marcus said. You are not simply receiving benefits. You have authority over major ownership decisions. The words felt heavier than she expected. She had not spent years dreaming about power. She had spent years trying to be a good wife, a good nurse, and a good person. But suddenly the man who claimed she was holding him back was building his future around an institution she legally controlled. Elena looked at the expansion agreement. Darius needs this approval. He does, Marcus said. And he does not know. No. The silence between them lasted several seconds. Elena could have ended everything immediately. She could have walked into the hospital, revealed the truth, and watched Darius realize his mistake. But that was not she was. She did not want to destroy him because he had hurt her. She wanted accountability. There was a difference. I need to know what he has done, Elena said. Not what I feel, what the records show. Marcus nodded. That is the right approach. Over the next several days, Elena quietly reviewed information connected to the expansion project. She looked at financial reports. She studied contracts. She compared decisions made by Darius with the approval process required by Vantage Medical Holdings. The more she discovered, the more uncomfortable she became. Darius had been moving quickly. Too quickly. Several decisions had been presented as if approval was guaranteed, even though the ownership structure required additional review. Elena did not immediately assume the worst. She knew ambition could make people careless, but she also knew the difference between a mistake and an attempt to bypass responsibility. Meanwhile, Darius continued living as if nothing had changed. He believed Elena was still the same quiet nurse who would avoid conflict. He did not know she was carefully watching. He did not know she now understood every step of the deal he was trying to complete. At the hospital, people began noticing the growing distance between them. Some employees assumed Elena and Darius were simply having marital problems. Others noticed Simone spending more time near Darius. The rumors spread quietly. Elena heard them. She chose not to react. Her focus was no longer on competing with another woman for her husband's attention. That battle was already over. The real issue was much larger. Darius was risking something he did not own. One evening, Elena returned home and found a folder on the kitchen counter. It was not hers. The name on the cover immediately caught her attention. Hospital Expansion Financial Review. She hesitated. She knew she should not open something that was not meant for her. But then she noticed a second page partially visible underneath. Her name was written there. Not as Elena Mercer, the nurse. As a party connected to the hospital ownership structure. Her heart tightened. Someone had prepared documents that involved her without her knowledge. She carefully reviewed the pages. The details were worse than she expected. There were statements suggesting financial problems inside the hospital. Problems that could damage her reputation if the information became public. And attached to the documents was a draft explanation placing responsibility on internal management failures, including her department, including her. Elena slowly placed the papers back where she found them. For the first time, she felt something stronger than sadness. She felt determination. Darius was no longer just ignoring her. He was preparing a story where she became the problem. Her phone rang before she could process everything. It was Marcus. "Elena," he said, his voice serious. "I just received information about the next board meeting." She stood still. "What board meeting?" Marcus paused. "It's the one where Darius plans to announce his future leadership position." Elena looked back at the folder on the table. "He is moving ahead without approval." "Yes," Marcus said, "and he believes nobody can stop him." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them. "Send me the meeting details," because for the first time in years, Elena was no longer waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. And Darius still had no idea that the person he was trying to remove was the only person who could stop his entire plan. After receiving the board meeting details from Marcus, Elena spent the next few days doing something she had avoided for years. She stopped looking at the situation as a wife trying to save her marriage. She started looking at it as someone responsible for protecting an institution. That change was difficult. Part of her still remembered the man Darius used to be. The man who once stayed late at the hospital because he wanted to help people. The man who told her that success meant nothing if you lost your integrity along the way. But the documents told a different story. The records showed decisions made without proper approval. They showed conversations about moving forward before ownership requirements were satisfied. They showed that Darius had become so focused on reaching the next level that he had stopped asking whether he had the right to take that step. Elena reviewed everything carefully with Marcus. "We need to separate what is careless from what is intentional," Marcus told her. Elena agreed. She did not want assumptions. She wanted facts. That was the difference between justice and revenge. Meanwhile, Darius continued believing he was in complete control. He had no idea Elena was reviewing the same information that could determine his future. He walked through the hospital with confidence. He spoke to executives as if his promotion was already guaranteed. He introduced Simone as an important part of the expansion discussions, making no effort to hide how close they had become. The more powerful Darius felt, the less careful he became. One afternoon, Elena saw him leaving a conference room with Simone. They stopped when they noticed her. For a brief moment, there was silence. Simone smiled politely. "Everything okay, Elena?" The question sounded harmless. But Elena noticed the confidence behind it. Simone no longer looked like someone worried about being discovered. She looked like someone who believed she had already won. "I'm fine," Elena replied. She continued walking. She refused to give them the reaction they expected. Later that day, Marcus sent her additional information. Simone had been reviewing hospital ownership structures for weeks, not just the expansion plans. The ownership. Elena read the report twice. The discovery changed something. Until that moment, she had believed Simone was simply the person Darius chose because she represented the life he wanted. Now she understood there was another possibility. Simone wanted access, and Darius was giving her the perfect path. That evening, Darius arrived home later than usual. He found Elena sitting at the dining table with a stack of papers beside her. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Reviewing some information." He looked at the documents, but did not recognize their importance. "You always make things more complicated than they needed to be." Elena looked up. The old version of herself might have stayed silent. The woman sitting there now did not. "Or maybe I notice things you choose not to see." Darius frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means people can become so focused on getting somewhere that they stop asking whether they are taking the right path." For a moment, Darius seemed almost offended. Then his expression changed. He became colder. "You know, Elena, this is exactly what I mean. You always want to analyze everything. Sometimes successful people have to make decisions quickly." She studied him quietly. There it was again. The belief that success gave him permission to ignore anyone who questioned him. "I hope you are sure about the decisions you are making," she said. Darius gave a short laugh. "I am." He walked away. Elena watched him disappear into the hallway. She felt sadness, but not confusion anymore. She finally understood that she could not force someone to value what they had already decided was worthless. The following morning, Simone contacted Elena directly. The message was unexpected. She wanted to meet. Elena almost ignored it. But something told her this was important. They met at a quiet coffee shop away from the hospital. Simone arrived first. She looked composed, almost relaxed. "I'm sure you're wondering why I asked to see you," Simone said. Elena did not respond. Simone continued, "I know about Vantage." The words immediately changed the atmosphere. Elena remained calm. "What do you know?" Simone smiled slightly. "I know the hospital is not controlled the way everyone thinks. I know there are people behind the scenes with more power than Darius realizes." Elena watched her carefully. "And why are you telling me?" Because Simone was not there out of kindness. Elena could feel that. "I'm telling you because Darius is going to lose," Simone said. "And when that happens, I want to make sure I'm standing with the person who wins." The honesty was almost more disturbing than a lie. Simone was not pretending to care. She was negotiating. "If you help me protect my position," Simone continued, "I can make sure Darius's mistakes do not become your problem." Elena looked at her. "You are asking me to make a deal. I'm offering you an opportunity." Elena almost laughed. After everything she had experienced, it was strange hearing someone talk about loyalty like a business transaction. She stood up slowly. "No," Simone's expression changed. "You should think carefully." "I already did." Elena walked away. She did not need to prove anything. She did not need to fight for power. She already had it. But before she reached her car, her phone rang. It was Marcus. "Elena, we have a problem." She stopped. "What happened?" Marcus's voice became more serious. "Darius filed for divorce this morning." Elena closed her eyes. "And there is something else." A pause. "He included documents accusing you of financial irresponsibility and claiming you are unstable." Elena looked back toward the hospital building in the distance, the place where she had spent years helping others, the place Darius believed he controlled. "He is trying to create a story before the truth comes out," Marcus said. Elena held the phone tighter. Then Marcus added one final sentence. "He also filed a request that could affect your rights before the board meeting happens." The morning of the board meeting arrived with the kind of tension Elena had never felt outside the hospital before. For years, she had walked through those doors wearing a nurse's uniform. She had carried charts, comforted patients, and worked alongside people who rarely knew anything about her family history. That morning, she entered the same building carrying a different responsibility. Not because she wanted power, because she could no longer allow someone else's ambition to put the hospital at risk. Darius arrived early. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and greeted executives with confidence. To everyone watching, he looked like a man whose future was already decided. Simone stood near him, smiling as if she belonged beside him. Vivian was there too. She looked proud. For years, she had believed Darius was meant for a world above Elena. She saw this meeting as proof that her son had finally chosen the right path. None of them noticed Elena enter. She did not arrive with a crowd. She did not make an announcement. She simply walked into the room with Marcus Holloway and several representatives connected to the Mercer Medical Trust. Darius noticed her. His expression changed slightly. Not because he understood who she was, because he still could not understand why she looked so calm. He expected anger. He expected desperation. He expected the woman he had always underestimated to fight for approval. Instead, Elena took her seat quietly. The meeting began. Darius presented the expansion proposal with complete confidence. He spoke about growth, leadership, and the future of the hospital network. He talked about his vision. He talked about his dedication. He talked about the responsibility he believed he was ready to accept. But every person in that room was listening to something different. They were listening for what he was not saying. The approval process, the ownership structure, the missing authorization. When Darius finished, he looked around the table. "I believe this expansion represents the next chapter of this hospital." A few executives nodded politely. Then the board chairman looked toward Marcus. "Before any final decisions are made, there is a required matter regarding ownership confirmation." Darius frowned. "What ownership confirmation?" The chairman opened a document. "This hospital operates under the authority of Vantage Medical Holdings." Darius nodded. "I'm aware." The chairman continued. "Then you are aware that major strategic decisions require approval from the controlling successor of the Mercer Medical Trust." The room became quiet. Darius looked confused. That approval has been handled. Marcus calmly placed a document on the table. No, he said. It has not. Darius looked at him. What are you talking about? Marcus did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward Elena. The silence became heavier. Then the chairman spoke. According to the trust agreement, the controlling successor is Elena Mercer. For a moment, nobody moved. Darius stared at Elena. The name seemed impossible. His mind searched for an explanation, because the woman sitting across from him was the same woman he had called ordinary, the same woman he believed was only a nurse, the same woman he had tried to remove from the hospital. No, Darius said quietly. Elena looked at him. Yes, the single word carried more weight than an argument ever could. Vivian's expression changed completely. The confidence disappeared from her face. She looked from Elena to the documents in front of her. You knew? Elena did not look away. I knew my family had responsibilities connected to this hospital. I did not know how much until recently. Darius stood. This makes no sense. Marcus responded calmly. It makes complete sense. You simply never had the information. The room remained silent. Elena looked around at the people who had known her for years. Some looked shocked, others looked embarrassed. The employees who had seen her as just a nurse were now realizing they had never truly known the person beside them. Darius shook his head. You let me believe. He stopped. Because the truth was painful, Elena had not forced him to believe anything. He had simply judged her based on what he saw. I wanted my marriage to be real, Elena said quietly. I wanted to know that you respected me when you thought I had nothing to offer you. Darius looked at her. For the first time, he had no answer. Because every excuse disappeared. He could not say he had been influenced by money. He could not say he would have acted differently if he had known. That was exactly the point. Elena had wanted to be loved without her inheritance standing behind her, and Darius had failed that test. The chairman continued reviewing the documents. The expansion proposal cannot move forward without approval from Miss Mercer. Everyone looked at Elena. The decision belonged to her. Darius's entire future depended on the woman he had tried to push aside. But Elena did not celebrate. She did not insult him. She did not use the moment to hurt him the way he had hurt her. She simply looked at the documents. Then she looked at Darius. I spent years hoping you would see my value without needing proof. Her voice remained calm. Now you have the proof. The room stayed silent. Then Marcus received a message on his phone. He read it carefully. His expression changed. Elena noticed. What is it? Marcus looked toward her. The evidence review has moved forward. Darius looked confused. What evidence? Marcus placed the phone down. The documents connected to your expansion filings have been submitted for formal review. The confidence left Darius's face, because he finally understood. The meeting was not only about Elena's identity. It was about everything he had done while believing she had no power to stop him. After the board meeting, Darius walked out of the room with a completely different expression. The confidence he had carried all morning was gone. For the first time, he was forced to face something he had spent years ignoring. Elena had never been powerless. He had simply never bothered to look closely enough to see who she really was. But even after the truth was revealed, Darius refused to accept the consequences immediately. He told himself there had to be another explanation. A misunderstanding. A technical issue. A mistake that could be corrected. Because accepting the truth meant admitting something much harder. He had spent years disrespecting the person who had supported him before anyone else believed in him. The board did not remove him that day. They followed the proper process. Marcus made that clear. This is not about punishment, he told Elena. It is about review and accountability. Elena agreed. She did not want Darius destroyed. She wanted the facts examined. The hospital was too important to become another place where personal anger controlled decisions. Over the next several weeks, the investigation continued. Financial records were reviewed. Expansion documents were examined. Emails between executives were collected. The more information the board reviewed, the more concerns appeared. Darius had not simply been ambitious. He had ignored safeguards because he believed the outcome was already guaranteed. He had treated ownership approval like a formality. He had made decisions as if confidence could replace permission. And now those decisions were attached to his name. The same name he had spent years building. Meanwhile, Elena returned to the hospital. But she did not return as someone trying to prove herself. She returned as someone who had finally accepted the responsibility she had spent years avoiding. Some employees treated her differently. Some looked uncomfortable. Others apologized for the way they had underestimated her. Elena accepted their words, but she did not hold anger toward them. She understood why people believed what they saw. She had chosen to live quietly. The painful part was that Darius had chosen to judge her because of it. That was something different. One afternoon, Elena met with Marcus to discuss the next steps. "The divorce process is moving forward," he said. She nodded. There was sadness, but no hesitation. Darius had recently asked to meet with her privately. He wanted to explain. He wanted another chance. But Elena already knew explanations could not repair years of disrespect. When they met, Darius looked different. Less like the executive who controlled every room. More like the man who had finally lost control of his own choices. "I made mistakes," he said. Elena looked at him quietly. "Yes, you did. I didn't know." The sentence almost sounded like an excuse. Elena waited. "I didn't know who you were." That was when she understood. Even now, he was focusing on the wrong thing. The problem was not that he did not know she was wealthy. The problem was how he treated her when he thought she was not. "You keep saying you didn't know who I was," Elena said, "but you knew enough." Darius looked confused. "You knew I worked hard. You knew I supported you. You knew I stood beside you when you had nothing." Her voice remained calm. "You knew me." He lowered his eyes, because he knew she was right. The person he lost was not the hospital owner. It was the woman who had loved him before his success. Later that week, Simone stopped appearing around the hospital. When Darius lost influence, the relationship that once seemed so certain began falling apart quickly. Simone had believed she was moving toward power. Instead, she had attached herself to someone who never actually controlled it. She eventually agreed to cooperate with the review process. She provided messages showing conversations where Darius discussed ways to move forward without proper approval. It was not loyalty. It was self-preservation, but it was enough. Vivian struggled with the reality as well. For years, she had judged Elena because she believed status revealed value. Now she had to accept that the person she dismissed had been the person carrying the greatest responsibility all along. One evening, Vivian came to see Elena. She stood outside the office door for several moments before speaking. "I was wrong about you." Elena looked at her. Vivian swallowed. "I thought I was protecting my son's future. I didn't realize I was helping him lose the person who believed in him before anyone else did." Elena did not immediately forgive her. Some wounds did not disappear because someone finally admitted they existed. But she appreciated the honesty. "I hope you understand why things cannot go back to the way they were," Elena said. Vivian nodded slowly. "I do. That was the difference." Elena no longer needed everyone to approve of her. She only needed to protect the peace she had finally found. The following Monday, the board completed its review. Darius's executive authority was suspended pending the final outcome. His reputation suffered. The same people who once admired his confidence now questioned his judgment. He had built his identity around being the person with control. Now he had to live with the consequences of losing it. Elena, however, did not celebrate his downfall. She focused on rebuilding trust inside the hospital. She met with nurses. She listened to doctors. She reviewed the areas that needed improvement. Because owning the hospital did not make her better than the people working there. It reminded her why she had loved the work in the first place. A few days later, Elena stood in the hospital lobby, watching employees move through the building. The place felt different, not because she owned it, because she finally had the ability to protect the values her father had wanted it to represent. Then her phone received a message from Marcus. She opened it, expecting another update about the divorce process. Instead, she saw a different notification. "Darius has requested one final meeting before the settlement is completed." Elena stared at the message. Then another line appeared. "He says he has something important to tell you about the night he filed for divorce." Elena arrived at the hospital earlier than everyone else that morning. She stood near the entrance for a moment, watching employees move through the building. Nurses walked quickly between departments. Doctors reviewed schedules. Receptionists answered calls. Everything looked the same. But Elena knew it was not. For years, she had been part of this place without anyone knowing the full truth about her. She had been the nurse who stayed late, the person people called when they needed help, the employee who never asked for special treatment. Now, she carried a different responsibility, not because she wanted recognition, because she wanted the hospital to become what her father intended it to be. A place built around people, not appearances. After the board decision, many employees approached Elena. Some apologized. Some admitted they had judged her because of her position. Elena listened to them, but she never made anyone feel guilty for not knowing. She understood why people had believed the image Darius created. A quiet nurse was easier to overlook than a powerful owner. That was exactly why she had chosen that life. She wanted to know who people were when they believed she had nothing to offer them. Now she knew, and that knowledge hurt. But it also gave her clarity. Elena began making changes slowly. She met with department leaders. She reviewed staff concerns. She visited areas of the hospital that executives rarely saw. She spent time with the same teams she had worked beside for years. The difference was not that she suddenly became more important. The difference was that she finally had the authority to fix problems she had noticed for a long time. One of her first decisions was protecting the nursing department from budget cuts that had been discussed during Darius's expansion planning. She reviewed the numbers carefully. The cuts would have improved short-term reports, but they would have placed more pressure on already exhausted staff. Elena rejected the proposal. We cannot call something a success if the people carrying it are the ones suffering, she told the board. The decision surprised some executives. They expected a wealthy owner to focus only on financial performance. They did not expect someone who remembered what it felt like to work the hardest shifts. That was the difference between Elena and the people who underestimated her. She knew the cost behind every number. Meanwhile, Darius struggled with the reality of his situation. His executive access had been limited. His meetings were now reviewed. The people who once surrounded him were keeping their distance. The same confidence that had attracted attention now made people question his judgment. He spent years believing influence came from appearing powerful. Now he learned how quickly appearances could disappear. When he requested one final meeting with Elena, she agreed. Not because she wanted to return to the past, because she wanted closure. They met in a quiet conference room at the hospital. Darius looked tired, not defeated, just tired. I know I don't deserve another chance, he said. Elena remained silent. I keep thinking about when we first started, before all of this. She looked at him. The problem is that you keep thinking about when things were easier, she said. You don't think about the choices you made when things became difficult. Darius lowered his eyes. I was wrong, yes. The honesty surprised him. There was no anger in her voice. No need to convince him anymore. I thought success would make me happier, he admitted. I thought being respected by powerful people would finally prove something. Elena looked at him carefully. And what did it prove? Darius had no answer, because the truth was uncomfortable. He had gained the admiration of people who barely knew him, and lost the person who knew him best. I never stopped loving you, he said. Elena looked away for a moment. That sentence would have broken her years earlier. Now it only reminded her of what had been missing. Love is not only what you feel, she said. It is how you treat someone when you believe they cannot give you anything. Darius stayed quiet. He finally understood the difference. Elena had not wanted him to love her because she owned a hospital. She wanted him to love her when he believed she owned nothing. After the meeting, Elena returned to work. She did not feel victorious. She felt lighter. For the first time in years, she was no longer trying to prove that she deserved respect. She was simply living with it. Weeks passed. The hospital began changing. Employees noticed that Elena remembered conversations others forgot. She knew the struggles of different departments. She made decisions based on both financial reality and human impact. The hospital was still a business, but it was becoming a place where people mattered. One evening, Elena visited the old office her father had once used. Marcus had given her access after the trust transfer was completed. Inside, she found a handwritten note among the old documents. It was not about money. It was not about ownership. It was a reminder of why her father had built everything. Never measure people by what they can give you. Elena read the sentence several times. Then she placed the note back carefully. Her father's greatest gift had never been the hospital. It was the understanding that power meant nothing if it changed who you became. The next morning, Elena received a message from Marcus. She expected another update about the hospital. Instead, it was about Darius. He requested a final statement before the divorce settlement is completed, Marcus wrote. Elena opened the attached document. It was not a legal argument. It was a letter, and the first sentence made her stop. I finally understand why you never told me who you were. Elena read Darius's letter alone in her office. For a long time, she did not open it. She had already heard his apologies. She had heard him say he was sorry. She had seen the regret in his face when he finally understood what he had lost. But this was different. This was the first time he had written without trying to defend himself. The letter was not about the hospital. It was not about his career. It was not about the future he wanted. It was about the past he had damaged. Darius admitted that he had spent years measuring people by what they could offer him. He admitted that he had confused status with success and admiration with respect. Most importantly, he admitted that Elena had given him love when he had nothing to prove. And he had returned that love only when he believed she could no longer help him rise. Elena folded the letter carefully. She felt sadness, but she no longer felt the same pain. The woman who had once waited for Darius to remember her worth had finally stopped waiting. She could forgive the past without returning to it. When the divorce settlement was completed, Elena did not fight for more than what was fair. She did not try to ruin Darius financially or destroy his reputation. She simply walked away. Darius had already lost the thing that mattered most, her trust, and that was something money could never restore. Months later, the hospital looked different. Not because Elena wanted people to know she was powerful, because she wanted people inside the hospital to feel valued. She expanded programs for employees, improved working conditions, and invested in areas that had been ignored for years. The hospital became known not only for medical results, but for the way it treated people. The same nurses who once watched Elena walk through the halls carrying supplies now watched her lead meetings with the same calm kindness she had always shown. Nothing about her personality changed. Only the world's understanding of her changed. Vivian eventually came to see Elena one final time. She looked older, quieter. The confidence she once carried had been replaced by reflection. I spent years believing I understood people, Vivian said, but I was only looking at what they had. Elena listened. I judged you because you were not displaying power, Vivian continued. I never realized you already had it. Elena accepted the apology, but she did not pretend everything was forgotten. I appreciate you saying that, Elena said. But some things change people permanently. Vivian nodded. She understood. An apology could acknowledge damage. It could not erase it. Elena returned to the hospital lobby after Vivian left. She looked at the walls around her. For years, people had known her as the nurse who cared for everyone else. Then they discovered she was the hospital owner. But Elena knew the truth had never been about ownership. Her father's greatest inheritance was not the hospital. It was the understanding that power meant nothing if it took away compassion. She had the ability to control everything inside those walls. But she chose to use that ability to serve the people who depended on them. Darius had once believed Elena was insignificant because she did not chase attention. Now he finally understood. The person he underestimated was the person with the strongest foundation. The woman he thought needed his success had been the reason he reached it at all. And the woman he tried to remove from the hospital became the person who protected its future. Elena continued walking through the hospital the same way she always had, without needing applause, without needing revenge, without needing anyone to prove her value. because she had known her value long before the world recognized it. If you have ever underestimated someone because of what they appeared to have, take a moment to think about what might exist beneath the surface. Share your thoughts and remember that the quietest person in the room may be carrying the greatest story.